this video, I want to talk about the if condition, the for loop, and the while loop. Now, my basic assumption is that you have coded before. I assume that using MATLAB or Python or some other programming language, you have already implemented these operators in your code. So I'm not going to talk about when and how these operators can be useful. I'm just going to show you the syntax of implementing them in C#. But before that, let's recap. In the previous video, we had this main camera game object and a script attached to it named myFirstScript. Inside that script, we declared a bunch of variables. As you can see here, we set their protection level to public so that we can see their values here and edit their values here. I also showed you that if a variable is set to be public, if it's set as public, then you can access that variable and edit its value from another script attached to another game object. To show you that, I went to the scripts folder and created my second script. I added it to the directional light and I tried to access this variable, for instance, my integer, from my second script. I showed you that the first thing you gotta do is to tell Unity which game object has that script. So using the game object.find, we found the main camera, we declared it as a game object here, and then we applied the getComponent method on this game object to get the myFirstScript component. We declared it as a variable. Its class was exactly the same name of the script, and we named it here the same name that it has in order to avoid getting confused. And then here we printed its value. We addressed its value by just a dot. So this dot tells that from myFirstScript, print out the value of my integer because it is a public variable and I can access it. Now let's say we want to command this line, and let's say we want to do different things based on the value of this integer. Let's say we want to print out positive if the integer is greater than 0, we want to print out 0 if it's 0, and we want to print out negative if its value is less than 0. We need an if condition, right? Pay attention to the syntax here. You type down if with a small I, and then inside parentheses you type down the condition that you are interested in. myFirstScript, my integer being greater than 0. If that condition is true, then do whatever is inside these curly brackets. The curly brackets must be there. I wanted to print out, like I said, positive. Else if, see there's a space here, else if parentheses myFirstScript that my integer equals 0. That's how you check equality. Then the curly brackets and whatever you want it to be done if it's 0, which is printing out 0. And if none of these conditions above is true, or else, just print out negative. This block of code will check if it's positive and print out positive, etc. Let's see if we have any typo here. Nope, we don't. Good. So if I run the project, it will print out positive. We wrote this in the start void, and just as we talked about, the start void is going to be called once in the very beginning of playing the game. So we're not getting a list of positive constantly. If we implement this if condition inside the update void, we will get constantly positive, 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 but that's not the case here. And what I want you to pay attention to is a bunch of conventions. One of them is putting a space here. Don't type it like this. It's visually annoying to read that. And also the first bracket of these curly brackets, some people put it here. I don't know why they do that. It's kind of annoying, so put it here, just like Unity itself does that. You don't see any C# code like this, so be professional. And also, whatever that should be done if these conditions are true, basically whatever you have within the curly brackets, do not start them from here. Just hit tab and make it easier for you, for yourself in future, or your colleague to read it. Okay? This was a simple if condition. You can imply the same thing using switch case. Just pay attention to the syntax. I type down switch with a small s, one space for convention, parentheses, and then here I um, I type down the variable that I'm interested. I want to define different cases based on the value of that variable. That's how I use switch. My first script, my integer is the value that is the variable that I'm interested in its value. Now curly brackets, and again I'm not gonna start from here, I'm gonna start from here. So I define a case. I say that the first case is this value being greater than 0, and then this guy. See, I didn't type down my first script blah 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 here. I've told C# what variable I'm talking about, so I don't have to, I shouldn't put that variable's name here. I just put the condition, and then this thing is important. If this case is true, what should be done? Just like old times, we print out positive. We end the line here, and then we also print out break, you see, with a small b and semicolon. I'm going to talk about what the break does, but let's define other cases that we are interested in. The next case would be the case in which the variable is 0. I'm not going to put it like this. I'm basically just gonna I'm basically gonna type down 0. This way C# understands that I'm checking the case in which the value of the variable is 0. This guy, what do I want to happen? I wanted to print out with capital Z. It's just OCD. Anyways, semicolon, break, semicolon. In the next case, the variable being less than 0, in that case we wanted to print out negative, semicolon, break, semicolon, and yep, that's how we did the same thing with we implemented the same thing we implemented using an if else. What does the breaks do? The breaks take you out of the switch. It tells C# to break out of the switch. So it checks the first case. If that case is true, it will do whatever you tell it to do, and then it breaks out, so it's not gonna check the other cases. So if you forget to put the break here, it will check the first case, it will print out positive, and then it will go and check if it's 0. Well, in this case, because of the problem we have, two cases cannot be true, but if you forget to put the break here, it will check two different cases and it will do whatever that it's supposed to do if those cases are true. So be careful, don't forget the break. Sometimes you may sometimes you may commence the break or don't put the break intentionally. It depends on you, but the break is important. Let's check if there's any typo. Let's run. And yeah, we get positive again. We implemented the same thing in a different way. It's important for you to know both of them. Now let's talk about the for loops. As you know, probably, for loops allow you to repeat something for a number of times. How many times? Well, sometimes you define a loop counter and you say that using based on the value of the loop counter, keep repeating that thing that it's supposed to do. Or sometimes you tell C# that for each element of this collection do something. In that case, in a for loop, you take out each element, do something on it, and go for the next element. I'm going to talk about both cases. Let's start with the case that you want to have a loop counter. Pay attention to the syntax. For with a small f, one space for convention, parentheses. Now we declare the loop counter just like we declare any other variable. The loop counter obviously must be an integer. You don't want to count the loop with a floating variable. So to declare a variable, you have to type down its class, right? The class of an integer is int, and then the name of it. Usually it's I. The convention is I, unless you need other names. Then you give it a value. That value is going to be the first value of the loop counter. So in the first loop, the value of the loop counter I is going to be 0. Then here you define a condition, and as long as this condition is true, C# is going to repeat the loop. The suggested condition by VS Code is actually a good one. As long as I is less than 10, keep looping. And we also tell C# that after each loop, increase the value of the loop counter by 1. That's one way we say that. So the loop counter is going to be 0 in the first loop, and in each loop its value will increase by 1, and it will keep doing that as long as the value of the loop counter is less than 10. And what should be done in each loop? The most simple example would be printing out the value of I. Please excuse my lack of creativity. You can do a lot of other cool things, but just so you see the syntax, I'm going to print out the value of I. Now if there's no typo and hit run, I get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You see, in the first loop it was 0, it printed out 0, it added 1 to the value of the loop counter, the value of the loop counter became 1, and since this condition was true, it printed out that value, and then it continued. At some point the I became 9, it printed out 9, and it added 1 to it, it became 10, I became 10, and since 10 is not less than 10, since this condition was not true, it did not go inside the for loop. That's what happened. Now I++ is a cool way of telling C# that in each loop increase the value of I by 1. There is another cool way, which is plus equal 1. This way you tell C# that in each loop increase it by 1. But the amateur way, which I don't want you to use, is I equals I plus 1. It's just embarrassing to type it like that. Be professional. Okay. Let's say in each loop I want to increase the loop counter's value by 2. I can do it like this. Then this is what you get. 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. Why? It's obvious. In the first loop it was 0. The condition was true. It printed out 0. Then it added 2 to 0, which made I equal to 2. The condition was true, so it printed out 2. It skipped printing out 1 because the loop counter was not 1. In each loop, it is supposed to add 2 to the value of the loop counter. So if you start from 0, you get 0, 2, 4, all the even numbers. Okay, that's all about the for loop with a for loop counter. But now let's say that you have a collection, a list or an array, and then you want to do different. You want to do something to each member of that collection. Well, how can you do that? There is a better way of using loop counter. First, let me define an array. You already know how to define integers and doubles. Now, an array is a collection of integers or strings or something. Let's say you want to have an array of strings. So you type down a string, which is the type of each member of that collection of that array. And then if you do this, you're basically saying that the type of my variable is an array of strings, and I'm gonna name it exactly the same because I'm a good guy. Array of strings, and then using the curly brackets, you can initialize the array. If you put it like this, the array will be empty, but I can do something like this. I populated the the array with A and B and C. Right now my array has three elements. The first element is string A, second is string B, third is string C. Let's see if there's any typo. There's none. Now I want to have a loop that prints out each member. Well, I can use this guy. I can say, well, let me put it here. I can say this. What it does, it starts a loop counter from 0 and it prints out the 0th element of this array, which is A, and the next one, and the next one. AC. Why it? Because it added 2. I forgot that. Okay, right now it's gonna print out A and then B and then C, but that's a very bad way of doing that. There is a more professional way of doing that, which allows you to extract each element and declare it as a variable and then do something on that variable. So for each element, you're going to do something different. And you literally type that. You type for each, but there's no space here. Be careful about it. Space for convention, parentheses, and then you extract each element of that list and you declare it as a variable. When you declare a variable, you type down its type first. The type of each element is a string. What should be the name? Let's say the name should be my string. And where are these variables? They are in the array of strings. And then print that variable that you have extracted. Let me comment this guy and see if there is any typo. Cool, there's none. Now if I run the project, I get A, B, C. What did I do? In this for each loop, I took each element of this collection, which was an array of strings, and declared it as a variable, which I named my string. I put the type here, and then I printed that the variable. Some people put var here. Don't be that guy. Don't be lazy. Put exactly what the type of it is. It helps debugging a lot. And if you don't know what the type of the variable is, you just can print the type of the variable using type out, I guess. Something like that. So we can always find the type of a variable and put the type, whatever type it has. Just don't put var. It's just a lazy way of doing something that you're supposed to do. Okay, that was all about the for loops. Let's talk about the while loop. The while loop is another way of repeating something, but the number of repetition is not defined from the very beginning. C# is going to keep repeating that thing as long as a certain condition is met. What do I mean by that? Let's say we have a variable, it's an integer and its name is I and it's 0 right now. You tell C# while with a small w space, while I is less than 10, print out I. Again, excuse my lack of creativity. I don't have any example better than typing the variable itself, the value of the variable itself. Let's just take it as an example. Right now, there's a problem. I is 0, and this condition is true, so it's going to print out I, and then I is still 0, so it's going to print out I is still 0, it's less than 10, so it's going to print out 0. It will keep repeating 0 until you get very annoyed. So what you should do is increasing the value of I by whatever you want, so that at some point this variable's value become greater than 10 and this condition is not met anymore, and then it breaks out from the while. Right now, if I run the project, I get the same good old-fashioned setup 0 to 9. That's the while loop. Now if you think about it, the number of repetition is kind of important, because I told you in, I guess, the previous video or the video before that, that Unity is actually a game engine that shows you the frames of the game constantly in a sequence of pictures. So it shows you the first frame, and like 2 milliseconds later it shows you the next frame and the next frame and next frame. It will do that, and if something takes too much, then it will crash. Let's say right now this while loop is supposed to continue for, I don't know, this many times, 100,000 times. Then it's gonna take a while, so it won't be able to finish this frame in 2 milliseconds, and all the other codes, all the other things that should be done must wait for this while to finish repeating, and that's gonna crash your game. You should not have for loops or while loops with too many repetition number in your code like this. There is a way around it, and that is the usage of coroutines that I will be talking about in the next video. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.